Welcome to Forum 360. This is Leslie Ungar, your host today. Thank you for joining us for our global outlook with a local view. There are different ways to look at women's advancement in the corporate world. First, we can look at women by the numbers, from a tangible perspective. Progress has been slow on the corporate front. Only 26 women are now serving as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, roughly 5%. Women are slightly better represented in corporate boardrooms than they are at the CEO level. About 1 in 6 board members are women. Women continue to lag far behind men in senior management positions. Yet the numbers tell only part of the story. To help us look at what professional life is like for women near the top, from a less tangible perspective, heart, soul, brains, and guts, are 2 C-level women that are a part of the fabric of Northeast Ohio. Joining us today are Kara Lewis, Managing Director of the Cleveland-based private wealth practice of a global money manager, A.B. Bernstein. Also being a graduate of Denison puts her in a group of really successful alumni. Victoria Marquardt-Schultz is an Esquire and CEO of Oxygo. She has a varied educational background, from anthropology at the University of Michigan to law school at Case Western Reserve and leadership at Harvard. Welcome to both of you.
Great, thanks. Happy to be here.
Harvard, right?
Yeah, Harvard.
Sometimes, you see like a sweatshirt, Harvard is spelled wrong, and like they weren't really at the Harvard. Yeah. Kind of like having a Rolex, that's not spelled right.
Well, I bought the sweatshirt in Boston, not at Target, so we're good.
Good to know. Our topic today was partly inspired by a comment that Senator Amy Klobuchar made about a candidate in the Democratic primary. About Mayor Pete, South Bend mayor of 100,000 citizens, she said that a woman with his resume wouldn't be on a presidential debate stage, meaning they needed more than a guy. Do you have to try harder, work harder, and be better than your male counterparts?
Go ahead. So, I think that I have to try harder, be better, and do better than all of my counterparts, particularly women, actually. I think are just nowadays, they're completely ahead of the curve. I think that, we have to do so much, both in our homes and at work, that the women that I, like Kara, that I'm with, that I know that are my peers, are just utterly amazing. And I think that's just because of the personality type, right? If you're going to succeed at work, you're going to succeed at home, you're going to succeed in everything. According to one study, there's a direct correlation between gains in return on sales and equity and return on invested capital and the increased numbers of women in leadership position. Comments?
Well, I think what that speaks to is just the diverse thinking that all sorts of diverse candidates and leaders bring, not just women, but having a discussion around a table with everyone that looks the same and thinks the same is not going to bring the kind of results that companies are looking for today. So including all walks of life, all backgrounds, all perspectives is what helps drive those results. I think that's what that's speaking to.
Now, as I said in my intro, 5% at the CEO level, 17% at the board level. What do you find in your professions for how women are represented at higher levels?
So in finance and wealth management, I think attracting and retaining women at all levels is challenging. Bernstein has been, is a huge advocate of diversity and inclusion. And I think we probably have a better demographic than some of our financial services peers, but we talk about it and think about solutions for it all the time.
Now, you followed a male in your position. Now, was there any talk about that? Was it harder to? Were they looking for a male, a female? Do you know any? Was it just best person?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this later. I mean, my predecessor was a huge advocate for me. He was a great mentor. He was an advocate, but I really don't think there was any discussion about male or female. I think it was about who was the right fit for what we needed, and I had those qualifications, had the desire, wanted to be engaged, and it was the right fit.
What, if anything, and maybe there isn't anything, so if there isn't anything, you can tell me that too. What, if anything, hurts women's forward movement the most? I guess what I'm looking for, is it internal? Is it things that they may do to themselves or their choices, or is it external?
I think sometimes it can be internal, just that confidence. I was actually doing a presentation at Denison last year, and a former professor of mine wanted to talk to women who were econ majors. And she made the point that these women are so hard on themselves in economics, and so it's perceived to be a harder major, and they get a B and they're freaked out. And they don't want to keep going, where some of their male counterparts in the class get a C and they're like, I'm going to be an awesome finance employee.
Yay.
Yeah. And so I don't think that's the whole picture, but I think it can be part of it, just that strive for excellence or perfection, and perfection is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think, now especially with social media and everything else, I have a lot of friends who will come to me and say, like, how are you doing this? All like, you're a CEO, you're going back to school, you're doing this, you're doing that, and I'm like, I have a lot of help, right? So like the selfie of me and my daughter looking cute on Instagram does not show like the rest of the house, right? And I'm lucky that I have a partner who steps up and does 50-50, right? So it's all about asking for help and being willing to take it. And sometimes you don't want to ask because you think, oh, it's a failure that I'm asking. Like, you're not going to get anywhere unless you have help.
Recently, I sat in a meeting, all women and one man. And I noticed that everything that the man said, the women just accepted it and supported it. Now, do women get in their own way? Do they treat listening, do you find listening to men any differently than listening to women?
I don't personally find listening. I mean, I guess I'm always asking questions. My kids tell me that I ask way too many questions. Like, why? My daughter said, how do you even come up with all these questions? But I think I'm just naturally curious, so I'm going to ask questions and stir conversation, whether I'm engaging with another woman leader or a male leader.
Now, I tell clients that, quote, work-life balance is a unicorn. And, you find that, then, good luck to you, because, you found the unicorn. But it is something that people talk about. What does balance mean to you?
I think it's a hoax.
Yeah, one of my professors, she did this really cool study where she said that women who working mothers, actually their children are happier in the long run, and actually go further in their careers. And it's something that I always looked to when I was starting to feel guilty about, leaving my daughter and all, especially when she was little. And she always told me, that when you have work-life balance, when you're at work and you don't want to go to home, and if you're at home and you don't want to go to work. So it's sort of, I think it is a unicorn, and it doesn't look like, for me it looks like, hey, on Saturday I have to go to work and my 5-year-old comes with me, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I just view sort of my life as integrated. I don't even use the term work-life balance, because then that just visually for me is like one is more important than the other. I mean, of course, my family, if something's urgent at home, that's coming first. But I love what I do, and my kids know that I love what I do, and it's just sort of an integrated approach for me. My husband says I thrive on chaos, so I like to think of it as organized chaos, but it's not always organized, and I think you just have to let go of that sometimes, and hopefully remove the guilt as much as you can about that.
What has been the most significant barrier? And I wanted to ask, as a female leader, but you wouldn't know any other way than as a female leader.
Good point.
Okay, I don't think that would be another show if you did. But can you identify a barrier that has been a significant barrier, or was a significant barrier for you? Or maybe you had no barriers, which would be.
There have been plenty of barriers.
Yeah.
But
I just don't take no for an answer.
Right.
I think sometimes I would say for me, might be the youth aspect. Sometimes I run up to that. They say, oh, you look young, therefore you probably don't know what you're talking about. So that's probably the closest I've come to a barrier. But once I start talking, and I've done a lot of research on, one of our companies is a welding company, so I went to welding school, things like that. So when I start talking and showing my expertise, it usually goes away.
I would say sometimes that barrier is the internal. I even have that self-talk sometimes. Like, can I get this all done? Am I going to be able to navigate that? Do I stack up, to these other leaders, either within my organization or outside? And so I think sometimes that self-talk can be our own biggest barrier.
Absolutely. I call it the stories we tell ourselves.
Right.
Sometimes we just have to kind of brush that little blackbird
Right.
off of our shoulder. You're now in a position where people are coming to you for advice, I imagine, or when you're at events and people that are younger than you now look at you as where they want to be. What are some of the questions that you get, or some of the answers that you give younger women that ask for advice?
Well, I hit on this a little bit earlier, but I've been really fortunate throughout my career to have great mentors. And
Now, have the mentors been both men and women?
I would say more men.
Well, I was going to ask that. I think sometimes people think that women should look for women
No.
mentors, or men should look for men mentors. So
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I think they started naturally just as friendships. I haven't had the situation where I've sat down with someone and said, would you be willing to mentor me? Like, that seems a little awkward. I think I am a people person. I'm genuinely interested in others. And so I think those relationships started just as that, as me probably asking a bunch of questions about their success and their role in our firm or whatever it might be. And so those friendships turned into sort of mentoring relationships. But then I do agree with the philosophy that you need to take it a step further and have an advocate. So a mentor might be just a friend or someone who gives advice occasionally or helps you navigate something. But an advocate is really someone who looks out for you, looks for opportunities, and helps you take advantage of those opportunities that you may not see, or they might be blind spots for you, and helps you take it to the next level.
And then I think that begs the question then, how does someone get or help make someone become an advocate for them?
I mean, I think at some point then you have to talk about where do you see me headed, or where do you, and start talking about opportunities if that's where you want to take your career, your engagement with some sort of organization. I think once you become friendly and have that mentoring relationship, then you can take it to the next level. I don't think you can just completely go to an advocate, because they have to understand how you, I mean, an advocate means they're willing to stick their neck out for you, and so they need to understand you. They need to understand how you work, how you think, what your work ethic looks like, et cetera. So I think it would be unrealistic to think you could go right from meeting someone to being an advocate.
Sometimes I think that people at the C-level, and as an executive coach, I get a window into the executive level, but I'm not there every day. And I think you don't realize sometimes what rarefied air that is, that you experience things that we all normal people don't experience. At your level, at the level that you're at when you're making important decisions, do you get resistance from men at that level because you're women, or at that point is it gone and resistance is only because of an idea or an initiative that you have?
I get resistance. I guess I never even I don't think I bring my identity, like thinking like they're pushing back on this idea because I'm a woman. They're probably just asking more questions because we want to get the best outcome. So I love to engage in, constructive dialogue about an idea or a solution to a problem we're thinking about. And I would expect that they would do the same thing with a male counterpart.
Today we are looking at kind of the inside of the boardroom with two C-level women in Northeast Ohio, Carol Lewis, A.B. Bernstein, a global money manager, and Victoria Marquardt-Schultz, Esquire, attorney and CEO of Oxygo. When you began your career, did you plan on being in roles that might be largely with male peers, or did that just kind of happen?
So for me, it never occurred to me that that would be something to consider. So my dad started my company when I was 12, and I was his first employee, and I started working there when I was 12. So I really never even considered that, right? I've had other jobs, of course, but I've had every job in the company since I was, basically a kid. So to me, I just never even saw that. I don't know if that's because my role model, my father, is a man. I never considered that it would be an issue.
My dad had his own company, a smaller company, but he used to clean the bathrooms on the weekends. I used to go in with him and he used to clean the bathrooms on the weekends. Is there a career disappointment that you can identify? And as you look back, was it really a disappointment, or might it have been an inspiration in some way?
I would say I absolutely love what I do. I feel like my career is sort of, twisted and turned. But all along the way, I think I looked for the positive in things. And that helped me, that outlook I think has helped me and helps me today as well.
Now, if I would have met either one of you as an undergraduate, okay, you at the University of Michigan, very good school, you at Denison, another very good school, if I would have met you and said, you know, oh, gee, what are you majoring in, or what do you want to do when you get out of college, what might you have said at that 20, 21-year-old?
Solve problems. I'm fascinated by you give me a problem, I ask a million questions about it, and I want to figure out a way to fix it or a way to optimize it. So for me, everything, if you look at all the things that I've ever studied, it's always about how do I make something better.
So when you went to the University of Michigan and majored in anthropology.
Actually, I got into University of Michigan on an art scholarship. So I was
So when you
I was an artist first.
So when you went to the University of Michigan with an art, did your father think, well, guess she's not going to come back to
business?
Exactly.
I don't think he did, because I was still working. Like I would come home like on the weekends if I needed to work, and then the summers I was packing boxes or I was proofreading stuff. So I don't think it was ever an option, even though I would like to think that I had an option. I'm pretty sure that it was always like, oh, even when she goes away, I'll be emailing her Word documents to proofread. So.
And at Denison, what did you think that you were going to do after that amazing experience?
I always thought that I wanted to lead. So I was an economics and East Asian studies major, which meant I took Japanese that I can't speak any of today. But I thought I was going to run some international company, and I wanted to be around people, wanted to be a leader, wanted to make an impact. I remember thinking, like, why wouldn't anyone want to just like, you know, be in charge, take charge and be a leader? So it was really, I think, early on that I felt that way and throughout Denison.
If you had to identify one or two skills that have helped you most, what would they be?
I'm not afraid to fail, and fail more than once, because you have to try things twice just to make sure it's not a fluke.
Okay. And a skill that
I think being comfortable with the uncomfortable, or like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, which I've reminded myself for the past 20 some years, and I continue to remind myself of that. But if it's something that you can just sort of do with your eyes closed and you're comfortable, well, you're probably not pushing the limit.
Now, people talk about the boys' club, and we've recently had the impeachment hearings, and if you look at the Senate floor, it's kind of a boys' club. Do you notice a boys' club, or is it just something that you don't notice, figuratively or literally, or is it something that just really isn't there for you?
I mean, I think there is around certain activities, right? Like a lot of men happens to enjoy playing golf. I don't really enjoy playing golf. If I wanted to play golf, I could go play golf with them.
So do you feel you need to play golf because they play golf?
No.
Okay.
So I have a friend who's an attorney who played golf at Wake Forest. She can go play golf with the best of them, and I think she does. So I think it's looking at it that way. Like I can find other opportunities to build relationships, to make an impact on folks that in my office that I'm helping lead, I'm helping creating opportunities for them. So I think some of it's like when you're in a clique in high school, it just means they enjoy the same things. It sometimes has a negative connotation. I don't know, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I don't notice a boys' club. I know there's definitely, there's clearly more men, especially in welding, the welding industry, there's clearly more men. But when I just walk up to them and it doesn't seem like they're not welcoming, right?
Now, there's a ton of books on leadership. And, there's a saying that you can't learn how to ride a bicycle in a seminar. And I just wonder, is leadership something that you can read about? How do you continue to get better at the leadership part of your job? And is it something that you can read about in a book, or, mentor with other people or in different groups? But how do you get better at leadership?
So I love school and I love reading. So I always have something that I'm doing. I know you mentioned before how you always take a class. That's kind of the same thing. I'm always taking a class. So for me, I think that a good leader is an authentic leader. So I'm always trying to be myself and be true and be honest, especially with my employees and coworkers. How can I be the most true and understanding to them? And it can be anything from reading a book to, I'm actually a yoga teacher as well. So I became a teacher because I wanted to take those.
Fit more into your.
Yeah. See, I asked for help. That's how I fit it all in. But you know, that whole path is about how do you be yourself? How do you uncover your purpose, and how do you communicate that?
I think also being a leader, you still need really authentic feedback, and so sometimes it's hard.
Is that harder and harder to get?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, who
Right.
wants
Who wants
to
to
really
give you feedback and say,
Yeah.
you really screwed that up, Kara, this would have been a better option.
Yeah.
And so surrounding yourself, you don't need a ton of people, but sort of like an inner board of directors of your, personal leadership is critical so that you can get feedback and then practice it though. I don't think you can just say there's a better way and then you have to go and try to implement it and see how that works.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I recently, I had a client that was a managing partner, and I wrote it. She needed a new executive assistant, and she asked me to write an ad. She wasn't having luck, so she asked me to write an ad, and I thought, what she needs is a CEO of her. Like, she's the CEO, but she needs a CEO of her. So, like, do you have a CEO of you, or is it a group of people that you kind of talked about that help you? Who helps you going and filling all those buckets?
Well, Kara. I think you have your professional group, and then you also have friends that you can ask. And then for me, it's my partner. I always make sure that he feels comfortable giving me feedback, and that it's not going to be like I'm not going to blow up and.
Right.
So we're not going out to dinner tonight.
Right. Right. If we want to get better
Yeah.
and continue to lead our organizations in the best way we can, we need that feedback. So for me, it's been a group. Like I've sought that out in different ways, and that's been invaluable.
What keeps you motivated?
My daughter.
Because?
I just want to impress her. I do.
She's impressed.
I just want her to know that she can do like anything, right? And my dad showed me that I could do anything, and I want to do that for her.
Is it difficult to stay motivated when you reach your level, or does just everything in your job just keep you
I can't
motivated?
imagine not feeling just energized. I mean, my kids, I want to show, I have 2 girls, 2 boys. I would love to show them that. I always felt like, I could do anything. I think the work that we do is really important to me, and so I love making an impact on families, and so that keeps me motivated, that I take, my role really seriously in terms of what we do for families, and so that keeps me motivated too.
In the remaining minutes, I'm going to ask you for 1 or 2 word answers. What surprised you most when you got to this level? Was there something that you saw inside that surprised you that you didn't think would be that way?
I think I would say wanting feedback, like having those relationships change and wanting feedback.
Yeah, agree. People definitely are not as transparent as they once were. Once you have a C in your name,
Is there something that would surprise us if we learned about it that we don't think of? We think of someone having the corner office or the expense account or this or that. What would surprise us about your everyday life?
It's not glamorous. It's still really hard. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Leadership is good. Leadership is servitude, right?
Yeah.
So you need to. It's not.
And it's 24/7.
Yeah,
right.
You're on.
You don't get a time off.
Yeah.
I had a roommate that was a stewardess once, and the same kind of thing.
Right.
It wasn't not glamorous.
Yeah.
What talent would you most like to have?
Needing less sleep.
Okay.
I'd like to be able to speak another language really well, like Spanish or Mandarin, probably.
And what do you consider so far, still pretty young in your executive
young.
career, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
I think that my kids still think that I'm really engaged, right? Like, so I'm balancing 4 kids, a husband, a career, and I feel like I'm most days like pull it all together.
And people actually believe you.
Right.
You are, right? Right?
So we have a product, right, that helps people breathe. So when I can see it out in the world and I get to talk to people who were stuck at home and now are out and about, like that is what I'm most proud of.
That's awesome.
The Superwoman is played by Gal Gadot today. She's not a real character, but who's a hero to you? Real or not? Who's someone that's a hero to you?
Yeah, I don't have one, right?
I think the other women that I'm sort of like going on this journey with, like Victoria, like a couple other ones, like we're all sort of in it together, and they help keep me motivated, inspired, et cetera, all those other kinds of things. So
I have to agree with that.
What if you could talk to your 14 or 16 or 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
be more fearless.
Fail more, fail faster.
And test it and make sure that it's really a failure.
Yeah, right, just keep doing it. Yeah.
Once is not enough.
Yeah.
Apparently, we have learned today one failure is not enough. It has been almost 50 years since Helen Reddy's I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar first made its way onto American Airways in 1972. In some ways, women in corporate America are, as the song proclaims, in numbers too big to ignore, yet not in leadership positions. Today, 2 C-level women joined us to tell us about their successes and their barriers as C-level leaders. You might say, how they roar. They joined us today because their successes and barriers are all women's successes and barriers. Thank you to Kara Lewis, Managing Director of the Cleveland office of A.B. Bernstein, and Victoria Marquardt-Schultz, Esquire and CEO of Oxygo, for giving our audience an inside perspective to how close or how far is that glass ceiling. I'm Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us on Forum 360 for our global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.